developing, in my experience, the biggest misconception is people don't know the numbers. So you sell a house for $2 million and the everyday person assumes like, oh, now Mark has $2 million in his pocket, where the numbers are quite different than that.
Welcome back to Brian Bandas Builds a Business, where we talk about real estate development and business building and how to do both while staying sane in mind, body, and spirit. Hey, I hope you guys had a great Christmas and a great New Year. Hope you're excited about 2025. In fact, I think I'm going to do a video about that in the next week or two, talking about some of the goals and what the new year looks like. Over the holidays, I had the chance to visit with one of the builders who I call frequently with questions about the business, about construction, etc., and basically interview him and ask him a bunch of questions that I thought that you guys might get something out of. His name is Mark Behrens. He helps run Behrens Custom Homes just outside of Boston. He's got a ton of experience. He's an extraordinary builder. Their houses are awesome. Every time I talk with him or walk through one of their houses, I'm basically taking pictures and stealing ideas from them. So let's just get right to it. Here is my interview with Mark Behrens. All right, so I am here with Mark Behrens. He's not just handsome, he's a great builder. Mark, tell us briefly about yourself and your background in like construction, building, development, etc.
So I'm a residential builder. Currently working on a project outside of Boston. It's 16 units, mix of townhomes and single families. Grew up in construction. My father worked doing the same thing, and we work together to this day. Commercial for like 5 or 6 years, and then got into the residential space about 10 years ago. And primarily spec building, but a little bit of custom in the mix too.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you 10 questions. You just give me your best answer. We wanna hear from experienced builder developer. So let me start here. What, in your opinion, is the difference between building and developing?
So I think in my world at least, building is both, developing is one. So if you're a developer, if you're focused on developing, you're maybe finding the properties, you're doing the pro formas, you're setting up the deals, maybe you're getting the building permit, and then you're kind of handing it off. And maybe if you're a developer, you're doing 10 of those, 20 of those, 100 of those, or whatever. Builder, it seems like a little bit of a smaller scale, probably because, as you know, once you've started the developing process, you do all of that, you do the permitting, and then the show is yours to build it out. So I see kind of a builder as both, and maybe like on a smaller scale, and then developer could be maybe a bigger scale and not doing the building part.
All right, what would you say is the hardest thing about the residential construction world, or the hardest thing about being a builder?
So I think the hardest thing is probably, I guess the most challenging thing is like the risk, getting the pro forma right, making sure you're, let's say you're a smaller builder like I am, you have the capacity for, on different sites, maybe 5 builds at max. So you want to pick those wisely and, make sure that you've done your homework to see that you're making a good deal, because you're investing a lot of time, your personal time, the builder's personal time in those projects. So it's getting those right. Like that's not like the hardest work, but that's the most challenging aspect for me of it. The hardest part, I think, is, the waltz of the schedule and the sequence of everybody getting in and doing their thing when you need it done. So I'd say that's the most like challenging work-wise, but the most challenging mentally, and where the most risk is involved is making sure you're picking the right projects.
Yeah, that's on the scale that we do it. You don't have there's not a lot of margin for error. You've got 3 to 5 deals in a year, and 1 or 2 of those miss, all of a sudden most of your income's gone.
Right.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room for error. What do you like the best? What's your favorite thing about your career?
I think kind of overall, it's like the creativity of it. So it's like, it's great to be able to pick out the finishes, make a beautiful product, and that creative side is awesome. But it's also, everything is kind of in that creative vein where like you're picking your projects. Where do you want to work? What do you want to build? Who do you want to work with? There's like, I guess that kind of dovetails into like the flexibility of what we do too. If I need to coach my kids' soccer team on Wednesday afternoons, I'm not asking anybody to do that. Do you have to work more other times? Yes, but I like the flexibility and the creativity of like picking exactly what you're going to do, and you write your own destiny. And I think that as far as picking jobs, picking materials, even picking like who you want to work with, like who are your subs, like who do you feel like hanging out with and having communication with for the next however long you're working with them. So kind of the creativity part of it.
So I've actually talked quite a bit on this channel about that sort of control over your schedule and the flexibility. And I think you would agree, it's not that it's not a lot of work. You're doing a lot of work, as much or more as other people, but you do get to decide when you're going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to work tonight so that I can coach my kids' soccer game at 3 this afternoon or whatever. And that flexibility I've talked about a lot as a huge motivator for me, and one of the main reasons I encourage people to look at, considering learning how to do this. All right, here's a fun one. What is the biggest mistake you've made, and how did you fix it?
The biggest technical mistake I made was when I first started doing this. I accidentally, mistakenly capped a main sewer line leaving a house. Family moves in, toilets are backing up. Oh no, what happened? And figured out that's what happened. So fixed it by digging a big hole.
It's a bad one.
Reconnecting the line. And it is a bad one, and it sounds bad, but at the end of the day, it was, 5 hours of work, open communication with the folks who bought the house, and everything was fine, and no harm, no foul. But I think business-wise, biting off more than I can chew. Just taking on way too many projects, especially when there's a time I was doing a mix of custom, spec, and just had way too many going on, spread way too thin, not good work-life balance, and just naturally the quality of what you're doing can't be top-notch if you're spread way too thin.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about our business, either building or development or both? What's the biggest misconception?
It's a good question. So building, I think the biggest misconception is that it's maybe not that it's easy, but I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you tell somebody what you do, they're like, "Oh, so are you actually doing the work, like hammering the nails?" And you're like, "No, I'm managing it and coordinating it." And they're like, "Oh," so kind of in their mind, they're thinking, "You just check in and say looking good and walk away." So I think a big misconception of building is that it's building or supervising in general is that you're just watching other people do the work, when it's just all of the ordering and sequencing and making sure things are perfect, and pushing the porta potty out of the way so the dumpster guy can, all those things that fall on you. I think just kind of gets lost in so you're the manager, so you're just watching. And then developing, in my experience, the biggest misconception is people don't know the numbers. So you sell a house for $2 million and it just, I don't know if it's the way it sounds, but the everyday person assumes oh, now Mark has $2 million in his pocket, where the numbers are quite different than that. But I think that's a huge misconception, that developers, especially small builder developers, are just raking in all this profit from builds, when that's just not the case.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about you turned the question on me and asked my biggest mistake, which I'm going to do a whole video about this, so I'm not going to go into it too much here. But it was similarly, it was biting off too much. And the main reason I think I made that mistake was, even being in a family with numerous builders growing up and now, I still was wrong about how difficult it is. And so I thought, can't be that hard. I'm watching these guys do it. So I ended up taking on way too much, and it is really hard. And then I multiplied that by, however many projects. So to your point, even I had a front row seat to it before I started doing it, and totally underestimated the difficulty. And I agree with you. I think the biggest misconception on the building side is just people don't understand how hard it is. And I've seen that firsthand. Like you said, when you tell somebody, here's what I do, or you're talking to a client or a buyer, or we're just finishing up X, Y, and Z, and they just have an unrealistic picture in their mind of what finishing that up entails,
Right.
If somebody was wanting to get into this business, in your opinion, what's the best way to get started, to begin sort of learning how to do this?
I think definitely getting some experience is key, and you hear that about everything. But if you're just starting fresh, it's how do I do that? And it could be a number of things. You could work for subcontractors just to get the picture of how things work. Whether it is construction in general, if you do a kind of some commercial construction first, like I did, or even working in residential and, working for a plumber, working for a framer, not tons of time, but some time to kind of get the picture of how things work. And then, it would be great to, if you have the ability to maybe work for a builder for a little while, and if you can kind of have a mentor to help develop you and kind of see what they did, what you liked, what you didn't like. I think that's really helpful to the best experience is like if you can work for a builder, let's say for a year or two, maybe more if the setup's right. Learn how it's done and then go do it on your own. But I think that's, people have heard it before, but like you can make your mistakes on somebody else's dime. Yeah. So do a lot of learning you can when you're an employee of somebody. And that will just save you money down the road.
To that point, I made all my mistakes on my own dime, which
stinks.
Maybe was a mistake. What is something that you wish that you had known much earlier in your career? Let's both take a sip of coffee.
Yeah, ponder that. I'm actually still learning this. So I wish I would have learned, and this is still true. I wish I'd learned how to get some like alternative investment. So a lot of the investment that I'm used to using on my builds is like conventional bank financing. And that has been great, and I'm going to continue to do that. But I just don't have much experience with like other streams of investments that aren't as conventional. And I think that's even more important when you're getting started. If you're not working in a family business, or if you're going on in your own, if you can figure out and learn and like cultivate your network of people that can invest in you. I think that's so important, whether if it is a cultivated relationship with a conventional bank or with a private lender or hard money lending company of some sort. Like I think with just getting started, that's kind of like your biggest first hurdle to like being able to acquire a property, right? So if you don't have your own money and you need it financed like most builder developers do, figuring that out early is helpful, and it can help serve you throughout your whole career.
Yeah. Dude, that's a great answer. I think that myself and most of the people that end up watching these videos, I think the consensus is generally that the financing side, how do you fund a build? How do you, depending on what city you're in, I mean, we're doing smaller infill projects in Nashville. We still got to come up with $600,000-$700,000 to do them. So I think that generally is probably the most daunting thing for people starting out. So I agree. You've got to, there's really no way around it. It's some grunt work to start just working on finding those people and building those relationships early on. This is kind of a funny question, but obviously you don't have to be a builder, developer. You can go do whatever you decide to do, but you've continued doing this for 15 years now, and I don't think you're about to stop. What are, in a positive way, like what are the things that keep you in this career, keep you doing this?
So it's mostly I would say the flexibility of life, and that you have that flexibility, and then also the potential for earnings. It's just you have way more potential to earn more than you would being an employee for somebody, or working in some other capacity. And so I think like that those two things are what like keep me here, like the potential for growth, that there really is no ceiling. You're your own ceiling. You don't need to ask anybody for a raise. You don't need to compete with anybody for a raise. You're trying to build your own business, and you're kind of writing your own destiny. So that's super appealing. That's also true at the same time. While you're flexible, you can be there for your family and kind of like create the life that you want to have.
Yeah, 100% agree. What advice do you have if somebody's watching this, they're just getting started, maybe they are about to do their first project, for somebody who's a beginner, as a builder or developer, both, what advice do you have for them?
So I'll steal this from my dad, but I know it to be true after all the years. If you're starting to do this, and if it's going to be your first project, you want to, and this is hard when you're just starting, but you want to, and you should be willing to pay a premium for a premium location in a good spot. Your first job could potentially, set up your relationships with real estate agents, with, if there's money lenders, and really, that's your first showpiece of what you're going to end up doing. So it's like, if you have the ability to maybe pay a little bit of a premium, get a lot in a good area, and have enough money to build a nice product. Like, I think your first one is really strong, and if that goes well, you can roll that into others. So I think just paying a premium and doing the right build, the right product in the right location. And so I guess the other thing with that would be like, take your time to find what that is, and find the funding for that, so that like your first project is a great one. And my advice isn't what I think that at least I've heard in my algorithm, where it's like, well, just start small, like do a quick flip and see how it works. If you're really serious about doing this, like, I think it's worth it to put the things in place to get a great first product on your first build.
So I heard the same advice from your dad. Probably to a degree ignored it. I didn't willfully ignore it, but in a video recently, and I'll link it up here, I talked about the challenges that I had in the last couple of years, specifically related to projects that I bought that weren't in great locations. And those were the ones that have given me the most trouble. That's where I've lost money, etc. Now, you can win building in transitioning areas or whatever. You absolutely can. But I agree. I think it's way more challenging for somebody who is new to it to know how to suddenly try to do a project and navigate the unique challenges that come with that type of location, on top of it's your first project and you don't know what you're doing. So I would say I learned that the hard way, and I completely agree. Location and just doing something nicer at the beginning is really, really key. All right, last one. This is just a wild card. Is there anything else you would want to tell somebody who is considering getting into this business that we haven't talked about, that I haven't asked you?
Yeah, I would say, like, if you're just getting into the business, like, it may pull you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but reach out to somebody who's doing it. Reach out to somebody who's already doing it in your area. And, if that's not well received, that's not the right person to be talking to, and you will have learned that and moved on. There are so many people out there. I have friends of mine that are other builders and could be seen as competitors, but like, there's not a lot of people that do what we do. And there's plenty out there. So reach out to people, start a relationship, see if you can chat with somebody once or twice a week, just even driving home in the car, and establishing a relationship with one or many. It's so helpful, sharing subcontractors, lessons learned, even at just like a basic conversational level, chatting. It's just building your network of that. That could even lead to projects. Hey, I got too much on my plate, but somebody approached me with this good deal. Mark, do you guys want to take a look at it? Do you have time? Do you have any interest? Great. So it opens up your network. So I think like a great first step, even before you start, just see if you can have coffee with somebody, or just chat with somebody, or even join a local organization and go and see some meetings and stuff with the National Association of Home Builders, and see if it's something you want to do. See if it's if the people you meet there you like, and I think that connection can really springboard you to excel a lot faster than you would just trying to figure it all out yourself.
So I've shared on this channel numerous times that I've got several family members who build and several friends who build. In fact, one of the people that I call a couple times a week is this guy. Find those relationships. It will absolutely propel you to success quicker. Hey, thank you guys. Thank you, Mark. As usual, if you're getting something out of this, you're becoming a better person, better entrepreneur, better real estate developer, then like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week.
Good stuff.
Nice job, man. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.